It's crazy. Seems crazy. So out of all these instances of all these different subjects, it all goes to what's happening with the energy inside of us. It's a big, big question. Near-death experience, psychiatry, and ESP, psychics, the CIA and remote viewing, morphic resonance, scientists that are against the notion of reality, the mind healing the body, universal consciousness, the natural DMT in our minds, and psychedelics, hypnosis showing past life regressions, mind over matter, and breathing, and a bunch of debunkers to debunk all that. That is what we're talking about. It is a big list and it's fascinating. And we're going to tie it all together in the end. And to start off, why do near-death experiences even matter? I just think the second I heard about near-death experiences about 5 or 6 years ago, I thought, oh, come on, this is BS. Somebody, you hear these stories, they die, they see the whiteness, or they see parents or old friends or whatever greeting them at death, and they come back to life. In my mind, I was thinking, well, that's just kind of wishful thinking. That's just kind of a little too much. So I just disregarded it as just total nonsense and never really paid attention to it much after that. Until I stumbled across this doctor. His name is Dr. Bruce Grayson. And this is fascinating to me, and also with this scientist, neuroscientist, Tamara Russell. These people are fascinating. And why are they fascinating? Because I'm a skeptic, and they started turning my mind to really think and question like I've never done before. And because they have a lot to lose. Talking about these things in public with their scientific colleagues is a big risk for them. These are scientists that have worked their entire careers to advance in their hospitals, to advance in their psychiatric and neuroscience fields, to tell these kind of stories that this guy, Dr. Grayson, says this is something that was bothering him. He goes in to the ER, to the family waiting room. This family is upset because he just left a person on life support. They're dying. They're not going to recover. So he walks down the hall on the other side of the hospital where it is impossible for that person that was on the deathbed to hear him. He goes down, tells the family to get ready for their passing, that this person's passing, and goes through the typical spiel of all that's involved in that. The next day, the person recovers, fully recovers and comes conscious. It's no longer about to die. She starts relaying how much she appreciated the doctor and his kindness talking to her friends and family. And he was kind of perplexed. He's like, oh, well, he was just assuming that the family had told or said something. Well, the family hasn't been in there to see her yet. She hadn't talked to anybody. So then he questions, well, did the nurses say anything? He's a psychiatrist, so he's probing. She said, no, I was in the room with you. I was in the room with you down the hall. And so, of course, being a psychiatrist, and he's pretty new out of psychiatry school, and he's like, okay, this is crazy. He's kind of spooked out. He's like, this doesn't make any scientific sense to me, and I don't believe in this nonsense anyway. And she went on to tell him that his jacket was unbuttoned, and she noticed the big stain on his tie. And earlier that morning, or for lunch rather, he was eating some kind of spaghetti, and he spilled sauce all over his tie. And that really freaked him out, and he was too afraid for many years to even bring that up because he has a lot to lose. He has a lot of credibility. He's a doctor. I'm a psychiatrist. I work in the ER ward. I can't tell my colleagues that this lady just said that, and what do I do with that? There's no way to scientifically measure it. There's no way to quantify it. So as that just started eating at him over the years, he continued to get these stories from the ER. He started to collect these files of people having very similar type experiences where they're seeing him or other doctors in other rooms where it was an impossible set of circumstances, where it just physically is impossible for these people to know what had happened. They had left their bodies. So what really got me intrigued about this is because they have so much to lose by talking and bringing that up. And then that goes into something else that is just even more mind-blowing than that is this guy. This guy is Ingo Schwann. He was one of the most documented psychics and remote viewers in history as far as we know. He was recruited by a group of guys that are contractors for the CIA and the NSA and all the big intelligence organizations. This guy documented psychic and remote viewer. For those people who don't know what remote viewing is, it is freaky and fascinating. It is. This guy was given sets of coordinates, just numbers to him. He'd had no idea what they were. He would look at them. He's in his own little room. These places are hundreds or thousands of miles away, in many cases on the other side of the planet. And he would just look at those numbers, and he would start to tell and write down what was happening, what was there. He would draw out what the place looked like and what people were doing there. How do you explain that? What is the power of the mind that we don't yet fully understand? Because this isn't some quack psychic, which I'm a skeptic, and I know that there's a lot of quack psychics out there. Like, that's for sure. But what do you do when you can document it? When you have proof that there have been many people, and this guy right here, this is Russell Targ. He's a laser physicist. He was one of the guys that spearheaded the remote viewing for the CIA for 20 years. They had to renew their contract with the CIA every year. And it had to be it was a performance-based contract, which means they had to materially perform psychic and remote viewing in order to continue the contract. It went on for 20 years. They did amazing stuff. The group that he put together was phenomenal. They were able to read documents inside safes. They were able to track the nuclear subs of Russia, all from their mind. And it was all verified. The CIA's verified it. So what do you do as a skeptic to try to debunk that whenever these are factual things? It's just amazing. And whenever they can remote view anything and everything, I was a big disbeliever in this. So I read this guy's book, Russell Targ's book. At the very end of the last chapter, gives an explanation of how anybody can be a remote viewer. And so I thought, well, this will just be a fun little, trick to do with my brother. And didn't think anything would come of it. Thought it was funny. But why not? Let's just try to have an open mind and let's see if we can do the same thing. We did it once. We both had a little bag that we held at the bottom, so we didn't know what the other one had. They didn't know, you couldn't tell how heavy or light or whatever. So we set it down, and then we just started scribbling out like he says. And then all of a sudden I started drawing it, and I would never believe this if it wouldn't have happened to me personally. 6 for 6, and I've been afraid every time I've gotten it right, it freaks me out. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, okay, I don't want to do another time. It's too weird. I still can't wrap my mind around it, even though it's personally happened to me. And they have remote viewing courses and classes and events that you can go and learn how to do it. And the average everyday person is remote viewing. It's a strange phenomenon. And, these guys aren't dumb. He's a laser scientist. And if you want to see a great documentary on that, Prime has it on Third Eye's Spies. I wrote it down. Third Eye Spies. It's fantastic. And they went on to help multiple police agencies, multiple sheriff's offices around the country. They even solved the Hearst kidnapping. That was a huge deal. I believe that was in the late 70s, early 80s, sometime around there. They solved that thing, all from sitting in a desk way far away. So what's happening that we don't fully understand? It's just something to me. And I like this quote that I found from Russell Targ. Although each of us obviously inhabits a separate physical body, the laboratory data from 100 years of parapsychology research strongly indicate that there is no separation in consciousness. So that means, in his view, for being around this and immersed in it for so long with the intelligence agencies of this country, he says that we may appear to be individual, we may have our individual experience, but we're a collective, and we're passing information back and forth to each other all the time. And that's a subject that we've talked about some here, and it's just mind-boggling. Another scientist with really interesting ideas is Rupert Sheldrake with morphic resonance, that we are the little things of the past culminate, which seems to make sense on the surface level of that, build up, and we could hear things from the past, kind of like what Napoleon Hill said in Laws of Success. One day there'll be a machine where we can hear Lincoln give his speech. Who knows if that's true or not? It's an interesting thought. We would have thought you were crazy if you'd have said 40 years ago you're going to have a flip phone and you're going to be able to talk to somebody across town or across the world. That would have been crazy. We had watched Star Trek with their little flip deal and thought that was just the stupidest thing ever. Oh, what a funny little TV show. And now everybody has one. So who knows what's going to happen that we really don't even know or understand yet. But guys like this are pioneers in thinking and challenging the materialistic view, the sole materialistic view of scientists, which I think that is the scientific method, is for us to debate and argue in respectful ways so the truth bubbles out. In no other field of scientific endeavor do otherwise intelligent people feel free to make public claims based on prejudice and ignorance. Yet in relation to psychic phenomena, committed materialists feel free to disregard the evidence and behave irrationally and unscientifically. While claiming to speak in the name of science and reason, they abuse the authority of science and bring rationalism into disrepute. Now that's true. There are many doctors and scientists that say, oh, remote viewing, I don't believe it, even though the documents and the proof and the videos of them doing it is real. The CIA is not going to hire somebody for 20 years to go remote view things and safes and all these other things, and they have the proof. And they just recently declassified those documents. It's from the 70s. So it's been declassified for a long time. And these things are fascinating to me, and I like to, because it challenges our perception of life, our minds, how we connect to the universe, God, the creator, whatever label you like to call the source. These are fascinating things that I believe we are put here on this earth to use our mind. We are here to learn how to focus on things that we never really talk about. We just skate through life doing our day-to-day routines, but in our off moments where we create the habits that form our identity, we just let all these other things bypass us because we use the crutch of some religion, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, whatever, as the sole thing. Oh, I don't need to do that. All I got to do is, trust in Jesus or Muhammad or, whatever. All of that's fine. And I think all of those are, and I don't disrespect them. I think that there are different pathways to get to understanding and enlightenment, but the universe, God, the creator, gave us a mind to use it. He didn't just give us a mind to go, oh, that's nice, thanks, I'll just throw it on this crutch over here and be done. No, these guys are proving there's a lot that can be done with our mind. And we're not reaching our full capacity as humans. We're choosing not to explore these things. This is fascinating here for you guys in the audience, or for you even at home watching. What do y'all see right there? Just a bunch of lines and little circles? Or do you see a cube? It's fascinating. Because you can look at it and just go, oh, that is little bitty lines. And then you look at it again and you go, oh, it's a cube. And you go, oh, that's really weird. How does my mind put together these things? We don't even understand how our mind works. And this guy, who is just fascinating, I should highly recommend his book, The Case Against Reality, because he goes on to describe some of the things we talk about here and dive into regularly, is that our five senses are a way for us to navigate through this reality. We can see, touch, hear, smell, see, without killing ourselves. Like we can navigate. But there's also so many other things, from the infinite inside us to the infinite outside of us, that we don't comprehend, and all those different realities exist. We just happen to be skating through this one. It's a fantastic thing to explore, and he's a fantastic guy to understand his ideas, because there's a lot of course, there are discussions on both sides of this, but it is worthy of our time and understanding to look at some of it. This perception is not a window on objective reality. What we perceive is not objective. There are so many things between me and this audience out here, and between me and you, that we cannot comprehend. The sun's radio waves, sound waves, all the particles between us, all the little planks that we can't even see. It's amazing what is happening that we have no perception of. It's pretty mind-blowing, all of these things. And we haven't even got to the best parts yet. It is unbelievable. There is no conscious agent can describe itself completely. I love that sentence because we are a conscious agent, the human. I cannot fully describe myself to y'all. Any of y'all sitting out here with me or watching cannot describe yourself fully back to me. It starts to complicate things. As soon as you start to explain yourself to me, then you're creating more layers upon your own self. it almost hurts the brain to start thinking about this, because an agent cannot experience itself in its entirety, no matter how large its repertoire of experience. That is fascinating. And we're going to dive into that a lot more in other podcasts that are coming. And then you look at this guy like Joe Dispenza, phenomenal. And Dispenza goes on to tell us and proves in his events, all of these workshops that he does around the world, and demonstrates how people just spontaneously heal themselves of all variety of ailments, which goes into the placebo effect. You can't have any new drugs that are made without people thinking they're taking the drug, but they're actually not. They're taking a sugar pill or something else. So if that is the standard that we measure how good drugs work, when that's just the power of the mind and the belief system of the mind and how powerfully strong that is. And watching Joe, and I say Joe like I know him, I'm pretty sure I will, is that this guy, this doctor, is able to talk in front of thousands of people and go through all this scientific evidence and do these breathing exercises, these meditations. And he's not the only one. There are many people like this. Of course, there are a bunch of shamsters and fraudsters out there, and I just absolutely understand that and am skeptical of them. But when you have proof, when you have scientific proof, where you are seeing the new brain waves being created, the new synapses connecting, and the wigglies of the whole brain, and these people healing themselves. What are all these things? There's so many things going on in this presentation we're talking about today. How powerful the mind is. Life is about management of energy. Wherever you place your attention is where you place your energy. That says a whole lot of things at the same time, because that goes back into one of our podcasts about emotions being time travelers. If you're focusing on one thing, whether it's in the past, future, or the now, you're dragging your energy to that spot. So if you're dragging your negative energy into your negative element or dis-ease, then you are focusing and promoting and pushing that thing, which tells us we can do the opposite. We can unwind those negative emotions. We can unwind our pattern of belief. Oh, God, I hurt myself. Oh, God, I got this disease. I got something. We should practice, and I'm definitely not suggesting we don't use modern medicine. There's a lot of benefits of modern medicine. There's also a lot of benefits of holistic medicine. And I think in most cases, a lot of cases, you should consult your doctor every time, of course, but we should practice holistic medicine first and use the power of our mind. Use the raw Mother Nature and tens of thousands of years of Eastern medicine that has proven these things to be true. It's pretty fascinating. I like some of the quotes from Joe Dispenza, because he says, I found that there are 4 things that were common among every person who had a spontaneous remission. First, they all believed. They just believed in it. The second is they understood that their thoughts actually contributed either negatively or positively to the disease. And they decided that in order to break their thinking process, they had to reinvent themselves. You have to reinvent yourselves. Our bodies are recreating themselves every day. At the end of every year, we're totally renewed, according to some scientists as of late. Where it used to be, I was taught it was every 7 years. Now they believe it's every 1 year. So if we're new, we're reinventing ourselves. Why aren't we reinventing our thoughts and remaking ourselves into who we want to be, health-wise, spiritual, in every aspect of our lives? It is fascinating. And the 4th was they spent long moments with themselves, thinking about who they wanted to be. That's what's required. We have to use our mind. Now, this next guy, to me, blows all these other guys out of the water. That's a big statement, because we've gone over a lot of crazy stuff. Edgar Cayce, he was 1877 to 1945. If y'all don't know who he did 14,000 plus psychic readings, which, okay, psychic readings, just shut up, Kevin. I know I can hear the people's minds already. But listen to this. This guy would get into a trance. He would have his family members or his wife write down what he was saying. She would transcribe it, because he couldn't hardly remember. In most cases, he never remembered what he said. And he talked in language that he never studied and never knew. People would send him in letters and say, hey, Mr. Cayce, I got an ailment. How do I cure myself? Or they would just say, he would encourage them not to say anything. Just, hey, tell me where you live, and just the very basics. He would go into these people's body in his living room. These people on the other side of the country all over the world. He would tell them what's wrong with them. He would look inside of their house from his bedroom all by himself or his living room and go into their house mentally and tell them, oh, look, you've got this thing in your cabinet on this drawer back behind this bottle. I mean, there's thousands of these. He would tell them where to get it, or he'd say, if you don't have it, you don't have it in your house. The store down the street, the owner, Sam, has it, and it's back here on this shelf. Now, that was 14,000 documented cases that was true. That's hard to go, oh, wow, all right, how do I wrap my mind around that? How do I do that? When I just learned a second ago that the CIA was paying psychics to spy on different things around the world. That's something. It's a big deal. And then to hear this guy, Dr. Dean Radin, who also worked for SRI, which big governmental contractor, and worked for the biggest corporations in the world, says the universe is conscious. It's consciousness. Everything. The whole universe. And this is what they study. That's phenomenal. And this, even to me, the next slide is even bigger than Edgar Cayce and his 14,000 readings. This is just amazing. Because I thought reincarnation was the same thing as near-death experiences. It's like, yeah, sure you reincarnate. I've been to India and I've known a lot of Hindus and Buddhists, and a lot of them think that there is some people reincarnate. I never really thought about it one way or the other than me just not believing it. I just thought that's some hocus pocus. Yeah. So did this guy, Ian Stevenson. He was at the University of Virginia, UVA. Unbelievable. This is before the internet now. This guy went around the world before the internet collecting stories and interviewing children. He had this very scientific protocol where he would interview these kids around 4 years old that said, oh, I got a shotgun blast in my chest in my previous life. And they got a big, what do they call those? The birthmarks on them. So they have birthmarks where they vividly remember and have constant nightmares about their previous deaths. And they have birthmarks of where they say they previously died. Now that seems like, okay, maybe it's a little crazy kid. But then the kid gives details, and there are thousands of these cases. The kids give details. The scientists go out to verify. All right, well, where did you live? Who were your friends? What did you do for a living? All these different things, all these ways to measure what the truth is. And in many cases, the kids would have an instance where they were on the other side of the country, the other side of the world. And this guy, he would go travel there to find out. He would go dig in, and he would discover that in over 3,000 cases, it was unexplainable. The only way to reconcile it was these kids were telling the truth. And then as they grow a little bit older, it falls away from them. It starts disappearing. I wonder why that is. I wonder if that's because in the West and in most places besides really India, we don't foster that in kids. We hurry up, little Johnny, move your butt. Get over there. Hurry up and go learn that thing over there. Forget that. And you get in trouble. Stop daydreaming. Stop doing this, as a little kid. Do we push that out of them and not let them self-express before their minds start to develop so their minds can no longer be receivers? I don't know the answer. I'm just speculating. But it's hard to say this guy was not right because he didn't believe it and he had to go prove it. And he did prove it. He wanted to prove that it was wrong, but he ended up proving that it was right. Just like the kid not far from here in Louisiana. This is a famous case. You can look it up on YouTube. The kid kind of barely remembers now only because he talked about it. And his dad and mom were huge Christians. They hated the idea their little kid was having these nightmares. He kept saying he was crashing in the ocean in his plane. And he was talking about the ships that he was flying off of and all these things. Real vivid stories kind of spooked his parents. And the kid just wouldn't stop talking about it. So the more and more this kid talked about it, the dad asked the kid what was the name of the boat. Little 3-year-old, 4-year-old kid that's just learning how to use his words. He tells the dad. No way this kid can know this information. Tells the dad the name of the boat, what kind of plane he was flying. Dad's kind of spooked out. He's like, this is crazy. What kind of kid do I have? Is he possessed? That's freaky. So what does the dad do? He goes and buys an old picture book of World War II, a bunch of them. And kid's flipping through it. And all of a sudden he stops at a picture with that boat, because his dad searched for a picture book with that boat on it. He sees a group of guys and he starts calling them by their name. Oh, that's my buddy blah, that's my buddy Joe, Max, whatever their names were. And his dad, is getting, the way the dad tells it, he starts getting goosebumps and freaks out. Like, what is happening here? And he goes, yeah. And that's where I died. How do you explain that kind of stuff? Well, because there's no way for this kid to look that up. There's no way for him to know. He didn't know who those people were. And then the dad takes that picture and goes and finds out those are the real names. That's crazy. Seems crazy. So out of all these instances of all these different subjects, it all goes to what's happening with the energy inside of us. It's a big question. And this guy, Jim Tucker, he's carried on since Ian Stevenson's work at UVA. And he's continued to compile these stories and studies and very rigorous scientific research into reincarnation. I thought it was crazy. Now I have to second guess my beliefs. How can you not? And then you go to a story like this cute old lady who just recently passed away. Her name is Dolores Cannon. She practiced tens of thousands of hypnosis experiments where people were under hypnosis and they had past life regression. Again, I think that was crazy. Like, sure you did. Sure you had a past life and you remember it and you did all these things. Whatever. That's what I would have said 5 years ago. Now I'm not so sure about that. I know that all of these things, all of these different subjects of the mind, is that the big grand creator is trying to show us something, I believe. How to better connect with each other, how to close the divides, how to not judge people on whether you're a Baptist or a Catholic or a Muslim or Jew, and all come together and us be able to lift each other up and create social constructs that are beneficial for as many people as possible and take care of our Mother Earth, take care of ourselves, and get closer to the infinite and being able to come together and worship with each other in powerful ways. That is the message I take away from these things. And she has tens of thousands, and I thought, this really stuck with me, this hypnosis thing, because I, like all of y'all, have a quiet friend. I had a really quiet friend that went off to LSU, Louisiana State University. I was 18, so this is a long time ago. And we went to one of those comedy show deals where you have a hypnosis dude. He warns everybody, if anybody gets hypnotized in the audience, raise your hand and let us know your friend got hypnotized. Well, I get on the stage and he sent me off. He said, well, you're one of those people. You can't be hypnotized. So, a couple of us were that way. We get back. And as I'm starting to go off the stage, the table I was with hollered out that my buddy was hypnotized. And this guy's shy. He would never talk in front of the public. He would never even get up and have a conversation with more than a few people, ever. He was shy. The hypnotist on stage started telling him he was a strip dancer because it was a comedy show. And my buddy starts taking his clothes off. He would never do that, like ever. And that's what stuck in my head when I discovered this lady about hypnosis and past life regression, because I was there firsthand with my personal knowledge of a buddy that would never do certain things, started doing them because he was hypnotized at a stupid comedy show. It's kind of hard to believe. It's hard to believe. And then it even goes on to other things, these mind expansion things. This guy is among many of them. He's a PhD candidate, Nick Glinos, and there's many other doctors and psychiatrists and neurologists that are studying DMT, which is made in our brain. It's also outside psychedelic. Some people believe that all these instances are caused from the pineal gland, especially most people that live in India. That's why they put the dot on their head, to not let them forget that their mind is expansive, that their mind is the antenna. And I believe a lot of that is true. It's hard not to after looking at all this information. So what is DMT? It cracks open the mind. All of a sudden you have a near-death experience. The same experiences these people are having leaving their body and going outside of their life. This guy describes, and many others like Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, all these other well-known people talk about this phenomenon as it being very similar to near-death experience. So all the things we don't know about the mind and how we communicate is being studied now, and we should give these guys some time. We should listen to them. We should hear what they have to say so we can better know ourselves, so we can better commune with each other and to God. Oh, and by the way, they call DMT, the nickname is the spirit molecule. It's pretty interesting. Now, this guy cracks me up. If y'all have never done breath work and ice cold plunges, this is Wim Hof. He'll sit in the ice and meditate for God knows how long, like for a long time. He doesn't get hypothermia, he doesn't get anything. He just heats his body up by thinking about it. It's crazy. And he'll do these breathing exercises. He has a lot of popular breathing exercises. You can find him all over YouTube doing breathing exercises and people expanding on that practice. But cold plunges, just jumping in the cold. and making his body heat up. It is fascinating. It's fascinating. This is one of his quotes. The Wim Hof way to get warm. This is wonderful. You can't help but laugh because this is so crazy. Are you one of those people who feels cold all the time? Would you like to be able to warm your body even when you don't have access to external heat source? Well, yeah, I'd like to not run the heater sometimes. It's kind of expensive now. If so, follow the exercises. Just follow these things. Because we've been doing breathing exercises here. After our service and after our podcast, we practice breathing exercises a lot, and it's fascinating. Because this guy is saying that he is capable of energy combustion inside of his muscles. And he's been able to prove that a lot of times. To heat up his own body, all he does is sit down and inhale slowly, deeply, 5 or 6 times. He's letting his breath go naturally. And if you look up these methods, you'll be able... I've had pretty amazing experiences recently doing breath work and acupuncture and laying on these Shakti mats that I thought were goofy. One other thing I thought was stupid. It comes out to be one of the most phenomenal, practically out-of-body experiences by meditating on one. It's something. But then we go, of course, to the debunkers like this guy. He's a super popular YouTuber, Professor Dave. He's pretty entertaining. I mean, it's kind of hard not to like him. Until he says stuff that doesn't make any sense, like placebos only work temporarily, which that's the case sometimes. But he says it's impossible to have simultaneous recovery from a disease. To heal yourself from cancer with your mind in a placebo or changing your diet and lifestyle, when that's demonstrably not true and absolutely provable that people around the world have done it countless times. So I don't know why these people like him want to dispel and squash the notion that each individual is more than what we've been taught that we are. We are more than what we know we are. Just by all these things that we talked about today. Our potential is unlimited. We just don't get tapped into it because we've been propagandized by guys like this to not know ourselves, to not reach for more. It's just a funny thing. Maybe it's just because he wants to do this in front of a cool red carpet deal. I don't know. I don't really care, but I know that guys like him are just gently turning people away from finding out all their own possibilities because they're relying solely on materialistic science, and then they say some things that make sense. And then they'll throw in, oh, it's impossible to do that. Placebos don't really work. When that's totally not true, or they would not be the baseline standard for every single drug that's ever made. And this guy right here, he's awesome, Ty Bollinger. He, as his 19-hour documentary, I think The Quest for the Cure, is phenomenal. He has interviewed and people that have their doctors, that they've had brain tumors and they've had all kinds of many different cancers, that they've done different diet and lifestyle changes that where the doctor said if they followed that, they were going to die. And they did follow the holistic path, and they ended up curing themselves of diseases that the doctor said they were going to die from. How is that possible? When the other guy before, Professor Dave, said that's impossible. But it's happening, and it's a fact. You can't just pick and choose what facts. They're just, facts are facts. That's a very interesting thing. And how does all that tie together? And what does it all mean? It means that we can do and be whatever we want. Is it our environment that controls our thoughts, or is it our thoughts that control our environment? Is it our thoughts that control how much we love and how much love we get back, or is it something else? Can we commune directly to the Creator? Can we think and project love to somebody else? How do we know that many of us have this experience all the time? You think of somebody and then bam, they call you. How'd you know that? That's just a tiny scratching the surface of our possibilities. And I'm here talking to y'all now, wanting to open up all of these doorways, all of these things that you can explore on your own, because we are better than what we have been told we are. We are more, and I hope that everybody reaches their highest potential and finds their greatest compassion and their greatest love for each other and humanity, and that we are able to thwart the negative, evil forces of the world and come together in love and in peace. And with that, I want to invite all of you here on Sundays at 1:30 if you're in the local area. And also, we are at Wednesdays at 6 o'clock in the evening, we do martial arts training because it's really fun, good exercise, and it's good to know to thwart those negative forces. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.